According to Stripe, we're in the top 1 or 2% of fastest growing companies.
That's Adam Nathan. After raising at $150 million valuation from investors like Tiger Global, he realized he needed to pivot.
I spent years of my life losing sleep, wondering how the I was going to find a market and build a business that could clear $150 million.
But he figured it out, and now his new startup, Blaze.ai, is a rocket ship.
We're on track to go from 0 to $10 million in revenue in like 15 months.
Adam told me his formula for how to accelerate growth and how to prioritize the right things during hypergrowth, as well as how to avoid overbuilding. This is Adam Nathan's founding journey.
Adam, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for coming on. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
So I actually want to start by talking about something sad, or at least kind of sad. Almanac, the original company, you guys have now obviously rebranded to Almanac Labs, and Blaze is the second product within Almanac Labs. But the original product, Almanac, you're in the process of kind of closing it down. I think you said by end of year. So, December 19th right now, coming up on that. How does it feel?
You said it's sad, but to me, it's kind of a happy ending in that we have built a second product called Blaze, which is growing incredibly quickly. We're on track to go from 0 to $10 million in revenue in like 15 months, which is, top 1% growth out there. And the reason we're shutting down Almanac is because we just don't have enough team capacity to both maintain the quality of Almanac at the level that we'd like for our customers there, as well as support the growth for the hundreds of thousands of users who are on Blaze every day trying to grow their business with our tools. So we have a team of 19 people. We have I think 9 engineers now, 3 marketers, 1 designer. I'm the PM, and so there's not a lot of folks to go around to build an incredible amount of stuff. Almanac and Blaze are both basically productivity creative tools. There's a ton of functionality and surface area in them. And at the end of the day, we just decided that we didn't really want to send our names onto something that we couldn't absolutely guarantee would be an amazing experience for every single person. And so the reason we're shutting down Almanac is because Blaze is going so well. I know that's not true for many companies out there when they shut down a product, but it certainly is sad to say goodbye for now to an idea that I was so passionate about, that I still believe in, that I think our thesis was correct on. And I've talked to other founders recently that are shutting down their companies without an alternative, and I can see the ferocity at which they protect their vision and just try and do anything possible to keep it alive in some form or another. And I certainly feel that about Almanac. But like a lot of things in life, it's easy to get over something if you have something even more exciting to move on to. And so I'm grateful that we are having a transition like that here. But it's still tough to not pay attention to something that I spent 4 years of my life on.
Building an audience is a full-time job, or at least it can feel like that when you're busy running your startup. But with AI making software easier to build, getting distribution is more important than ever. I can help. After growing my LinkedIn to over 40,000 followers and having 100,000 across all platforms, as well as a 60,000 subscriber newsletter, I know how impactful having an audience can be when you're building a startup these days. So I started Megaphone Studios, a ghostwriting agency specifically built for founders and their startups. Think of us like your startup's chief content officer. We turn your LinkedIn, X, or newsletter into a machine for lead generation, follower growth, and building your influence as a thought leader in your space. Our process is super lightweight for you while still delivering content that only you uniquely could write. And our plans are flexible with no long-term lock-in, because we know how fast things can change at startups. Oh, and I brought my buddy Blake Emal along to help me run the business. He has even more followers than I do. So email me at hauk@megaphone.network and mention the pod for a first month discount.
Yeah, I feel you on that, but definitely sounds like a happy ending, at least bittersweet at the very worst. What was the inspiration to go out and start building Blaze 15 months ago when you guys, you had Almanac? It was a successful product. It was growing, maybe not as fast as Blaze is now, but yeah, why start Blaze in the first place?
Yeah, well, I was going to write a blog about this soon, because a lot of folks talk about, how they launched their company and got product market fit. My friend Tyler, who I know has been on your podcast, writes about his company and in chapters as years of the company. So I was thinking about Blaze recently and what's our chapter 1? And really, our chapter 1 was a pivot from Almanac. And so Almanac is pretty critical in the story around how Blaze got started. We started Almanac 5 years ago at this point, in 2019. Started really as this idea of building a Stack Overflow for non-engineers. We thought there's a bunch of new professions like product management, product marketing, growth came about in the internet age. And a lot of those professions were based on tribal knowledge. You had to go work at a company like Uber or Airbnb in order to learn how to be a PM or a PMM. It was the information about techniques and best practices were passed from person to person. They weren't codified like how you would learn any kind of old economy career at an Ivy League school or something like that. And so we wanted to build, basically a repository of best practices that were validated by experts in the field, similar to how Stack Overflow exists to basically help engineers implement, at this point, commonplace components for code. We wanted to do the same thing by building jibs and hacks for folks who are learning the jobs of the new economy. We built that in 2019, launched later that year. 2020, COVID came around, and with the remote work, everybody all of a sudden had to learn new skills around how to work on the internet. And so the first version of Almanac, which is the Stack Overflow replica, took off. We went from basically 0 to 100,000 users in a couple months. We were able to quickly raise money for that. We raised our seed round in late 2019. I think we had a $9 million seed round, which at the time was one of the largest, at least one of the largest rounds of the year. Certainly for like a non-biomedical product. The first version of Almanac took off, and we started thinking, well, do we really want to build basically a double-sided marketplace where we have some folks publishing knowledge, other folks consuming it? We thought the market cap on that, like Stack Overflow, would be $100 million. And we compared the alternative to that was something like GitHub, which has a market cap, at least when it's bought by Microsoft, of $10 billion. And so we thought, basically getting a first draft or some information is worth, 10% of the full value chain. But if you're the source of truth where people are creating and collaborating and storing their knowledge and their work products, that's a 100x opportunity. So with the first version of Almanac, we had built, in a fateful decision, a document editor to publish knowledge to this marketplace. And building a document editor is one of the toughest things you can do in technology, I think, short of like building a rocket ship. It sounds silly, but it's just really hard to build a real-time rich text collaborative editor. Very few companies have done it, and those that have, like Notion, often take 5 or 10 years of just building to even get to market, and even longer than that to get to an inflection point of growth. So we had already started on this path of building a document editor. We had a very talented team, and so we started to think, well, what if we were in Stack Overflow, but we're instead GitHub? So we started building an enterprise product around building a collaboration tool. But collaboration tools and productivity tools is a super crowded market. It's dominated by, incumbents like Microsoft Office and Google Docs that have been in market for 20 years, are backed by billion-dollar balance sheets. They're, incredibly well-used products with a ton of features. And it was, it's hard not just to build a product like that, but to figure out, well, where's my entrance into the market where I can serve an underserved need that has a huge total addressable market. So like it's some crack that the big guys haven't figured out that you can build a huge business around. And of course, there are no big cracks unless there's a change in either technology or consumer behavior or regulations. And so we had been building this product, and we saw with remote work and the hunger that people have to try and figure out how to do remote well with our first version of Almanac, that, oh wow, all of a sudden the whole world is thrown into this whole new way of working that nobody knows how to do thanks to COVID. And all of a sudden overnight, every company in the world was remote. And nobody really knew, except for a couple pioneering companies, knew how to do meetings in a distributed way, how to do communication or collaboration over time zones and geographies. So we saw that as our opportunity with Almanac to kind of break into the productivity market in a big way. So we anchored what we built with Almanac, which is basically GitHub for Docs, around this remote trend. And so Almanac has really good version control where you can easily see who made what changes on the document in a kind of a Facebook-like timeline. You can ask for reviews and approvals asynchronously so that you don't have to have a meeting to get feedback on a document or see what somebody thinks. It's super transparent, super structured, and allows companies to work together without as many meetings. And so we had anchored both the product vision as well as our positioning around remote work. And I think that was smart at the time because 2020, 2021, it seemed like, okay, remote's the future. And I still think remote is the future, but it feels less like an earthquake than more like a climate change where the tide is rising, but it's going to take 30 years for a whole generation of managers to retire, a whole new generation of managers to come in who prefer to work from home, like I do today, probably like a lot of people that do as well. It's not that transition does not meet the 5 to 10 year return horizon of our venture investors. And so while I believe it will eventually happen, we as a company couldn't be that patient to wait for the results. Certainly our investors wouldn't be. And at the end of the day, my job, having taken venture dollars, is to provide venture scale returns to our investors. And venture capital is not for everybody. It's not for every business. I compare it to jet fuel where, yeah, there's lots of great cars on the road that take regular fuel, but there's only a certain kind of machine that can take jet fuel. And those machines can only fly between certain markets that are big enough for them and have unique other attributes. And the same thing is true for building a venture scale business. You need to find a market that is so large and can grow so quickly that it can produce, go from zero to $100 million in revenue in 5 years or so, and help, our investors return their funds, even if every other investment was not to work. And so, after working on Almanac for many years, we saw that even though the business was growing and we had probably the very best remote companies in the world all on Almanac, we had like incredible market share with huge pioneers in the space. We just weren't growing fast enough to provide, I think, the returns that I wanted to give back to our investors and also to our team and our shareholders. But we had built at this point a document editor. We had built comments and real-time collaboration. We built a file management system. We built a ton of security features that were all market tested. And, around 2022, I guess, 2023, AI started to break out into the scene. And for a whole year, I was basically like, I don't really want to, I'm not even going to pay attention to AI. We're really focused on remote work. This is just a fad. It's another trend. And like, I'm not going to be that founder that's just bouncing around between, the next shiny object that comes across Twitter. But it was clear, probably 6 months, 7 months in that AI was not just a fad. It looked like it truly could be a disruptive innovation that creates a ton of new markets and opportunities. And so at the same time, I was realizing, okay, maybe Almanac is not going to return the fund for our investors. We also realized that the thing we had built very luckily with Almanac, which is this document editor, matched perfectly with the first use case for AI, which was generative copy, generative words. And we also had built a ton of functionality around images and graphics. And so the next couple of use cases around creating videos, creating graphics and images also was supported by the thing we built. Like, we could not have been better positioned to meet this trend. And the hard part about generative AI is not the generation part. Anyone can plug into ChatGPT's API. The hard part is being able to modify the copy or the image, sharing it with people, distributing it, storing it, accessing it. That doesn't take AI. That's just regular old code that takes years and years to build in a really sturdy way. And we had already done that. We had spent 4 years building that foundation. So we saw that we had built something that, could quickly meet the moment. And so then the question was like, well, what will the value proposition be? How do we market it? How do we go to market? And with Almanac, as I've kind of mentioned, we were serving really big companies. We had an enterprise sales model, which I hated. I didn't hate our customers, but I think the tough thing about enterprise as a go-to-market strategy for a pre-product market fit company is that you don't know if the slow growth is due to just the inherent nature of the sales cycle. It just takes a long time to sell the big orgs, or if it's because no one actually needs your product. And so you can waste a lot of time trying to figure that out, and then eventually run out of money. And so that uncertainty always nagged me with Almanac. And so with Blaze, I knew with the new company, essentially, I knew that I wanted to flip the go-to-market model on its head, serve consumers where we could do self-serve. I get really fast feedback cycles, basically, as we do still to this day, of seeing by the hour, are customers converting from their trials? Are they retaining by day, by week? And so that sensitivity allows us to really understand how consumers at a statistically significant scale are reacting to our product quality and reacting to our value proposition. So I knew I wanted to go consumer and kind of rectify for the things I didn't like about the Almanac go-to-market motion. And so we kind of built this prototype for what became Blaze. We called it Megan at the time, like the scary movie girl. Nobody likes the name internally, but I thought it was funny. And we started showing what we had built to a bunch of people. And we knew that the first couple industries that were going to be affected by AI were ones that used words a lot. So marketing, sales, customer service. So we started talking to marketers up front. Sales and customer service seemed like not as big opportunities. We showed Megan to professional marketing teams at big companies, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool. We'll take it for a trial, and we'll have to show it to legal and bring it to our, budget council and all of this stuff." It felt like a nice to have for them. But when we showed it to small teams, agencies, freelancers, creatives, consultants, entrepreneurs, small business owners, the reaction was full of hunger. They were like, "How do I get this thing as fast as possible? I need this right now. And can I use it today?" And so that is the kind of, I think, product market fit and traction that you always hear people talk about. I love the idea that if you don't know if you have product market fit, you don't have it. And that felt like these customers were pulling us into the market. And at the time, there really was no one focusing on these customers. Even the kind of the first entrants into generative AI, which were Jasper and Copy AI, they started at this consumer side, but they started moving up market as soon as we entered the market. And so they were moving away from our customers but we were really focused on them. And the reason I think they moved away, I hope they're not listening to this podcast, is because I think their core product just wasn't very good. Like when we tried it, it just didn't do a good job of generating copy that anyone would want to use. But because we had really invested in a document editor, and because we took a long time to focus on personalization features like brand voice, we were able to generate really, really good AI-driven social media posts and newsletters and website copy and blog posts for our customers. And so essentially I think that fateful decision of basically focusing on this, really narrowing in on who we were serving and picking a part of the market that I think has historically been underserved, and certainly in the case of AI is continuing to be underserved because everybody thinks these customers are bad, is the key to our success. Because basically, the 200 million small business owners in the United States are not bad customers. You just have to figure out how to serve them well. And we had a product and emotion and a brand that I think had really connected with our target customers from day one. So yeah, from basically launch onwards, it's just been the kind of up into the right graph that you always see and see people posting about on Twitter. Big companies you dream about, according to Stripe, we're in the top 1 or 2% of fastest growing companies that use Stripe to process their payments. So, and that's been the case basically from the first day. So I think those 4 years of building Almanac were really just training and practice, and building our internal muscles as a team to figure out, okay, what do we think are how do you find product market fit? How do you find distribution? How do you create, inflection point growth? And that kind of prepared us to become an overnight success with Blaze.
Okay, so you have that overnight success, quote unquote, right? What does it feel like then when you have that hockey stick growth, when you're in the top 1 or 2% of companies on Stripe? I feel like you're in a scenario where obviously things are going great and you feel amazing, but how do you prioritize what to do? Because there's so many different things you do when you're on that trajectory.
The mistaken belief by I think a lot of founders or entrepreneurs in an early stage is that, yeah, as soon as you find product market fit and you find distribution and you start growing, like everything's going to be great and like it'll all be easy from there. That is the opposite of true. The bigger you get, the harder it gets. It's just that the problems change. And so you're not, and certainly personally, I prefer the kind of mechanical nature of the growth stage to the art and craft that takes to find product market fit and distribution at an early stage. It's much harder, I think, to be facing extinction and just kind of, as I describe it, wandering in the woods through the fog, trying to figure out, okay, what set of turns do I need to make to find the promised land? As you start growing, I think my co-founder and I both were like, oh yeah, as soon as we can't wait to get out of product market fit land. We can't wait to get to the growth stage. But once you start growing, there's a lot more to lose. You have customers and like loss aversion as a psychological factor kicks in and you're like, oh my God, like this all could go away. When you're small, yeah, you're fighting against ignominy and extinction. And you're like, oh my God, no one will even know all this work I put in. And because I've never me anything of myself. But when you're big, it's like, wow, we could really fall pretty far from here. There's a lot of people who are depending on us now. Like, this is going to suck. Like we will crash and burn. And it still feels like a house of cards where it could all fall apart at any moment. Because when you're growing really fast, I compare it to like a rocket launch where like, if you're looking at a rocket, like a SpaceX rocket, it looks beautiful and elegant going up. But like, if you've seen the movies of the astronauts inside, it's like the whole thing is moving and rattling and it's like, sounds like the thing's going to fall apart. And that's what our company feels like every day now, where because we're going so fast, there's pressure in the system. And so there's always something, there's something that's causing a bottleneck. And so sometimes it's top of funnel, like, oh my God, we're not growing fast enough. Sometimes it's conversion, like, oh my God, we're not activating enough customers, trial conversions down. Sometimes it's retention. And the mistake is thinking that there won't be a problem and judging ourselves for there being a problem. There's always a problem. It just rotates where it exists in the system. Sometimes it's recruiting, sometimes it's cash flow or finance, sometimes it's culture. And our ability to grow really fast is really our ability to detect the problem quickly, figure out the root cause, come up with solutions, implement, test, iterate, scale, and go through that cycle as fast as possible as you spot where the problem moves to as you solve one. So I don't think that it feels, easy at all. It's harder than ever. We're trying to keep our team really small even as we grow. And so we have to do a lot more now than we ever have before. And relative, especially to the number of people that we have. So we're basically still the same team size that we were when we had 0 customers. And now we have hundreds of thousands of users on the platform growing 30% every month. And we want to, that's partly intentional. We don't want to overscale the team. It is amazing sometimes, like when I end a day, like to think about all the like I went through that day. And especially as a CEO, I think the problems I see are the worst problems. Like I don't pay attention to the stuff that's working well. I only see stuff that's totally broken or on fire, or stuff that no one else can deal with. Even yesterday, I spent the day trying to get a money order to pay the San Francisco government for this registration fee so that we can we can accept payments as Blaze instead of as Almanac. And so I spent an hour of my time running around San Francisco trying to get a money order. I had to go to 3 stores, finally a Safeway, and then get stamps. And even though, I'm running the company, I'm the only person that can do that. And because my name's on the bank account. And so, even despite the craziness, there's always a bunch of you have to still do, both important and mundane, just to keep things going. And of course, that's true for our customers who are running small businesses across the country. They also have to do that stuff. So I felt, I was walking a mile in their shoes for a day, but yeah, it has only gotten harder and more stressful as we've gone. I forgot even what question you asked me at this point, but it's not easy.
The glamorous life of the CEO going to get a money order at Safeway, right?
I think people, you look at biz ink profiles with Elon Musk and great lighting, and you're like, oh my God, I think there's this valorization of CEOs and entrepreneurs as visionaries who spend their days thinking big ideas. And I think a lot of folks mistakenly try and start companies thinking that that's what life is going to be like, when the reality is that, for a couple years, you eat glass trying to find somebody who needs your product. And there's so much that has to go exactly right to get product market fit. It's just all these small parts of the equation that need to perfectly align. Again, in this, especially if you take venture capital in a model that's not just going to build a business, but a very, very big business. That's really, really hard to get right. It takes a lot of luck. And again, kind of craftsmanship that you hone through iteration. And then once you figure that out, it's okay, well now you have to go build a company for another 5 to 10 years. And your job is to do all the worst things and deal with all the biggest problems. And the problems are only going to get harder as you get bigger. It's like they say about the president, the only problems the president sees are the problems no one else in the government can solve. And I think the same thing is true to a much smaller scale of a CEO of a growth stage company where, it just gets harder and it is deeply unsexy and requires a lot of persistence and stress management tactics to come to work day after day for, at this point, again, I'm locked into this thing for another 5 to 10 years probably. And so, and then that's after, again, 4 to 5 years of just kind of getting to this point. So it's both a sprint and a marathon, to use a cliche. And, I think if more people knew what it would actually be like, I think it's good that people don't fully understand what it's going to be like, because fewer people would do it. And I think we need more entrepreneurs in this world. But, I think the best entrepreneurs are people who aren't doing it because it's a rung on a ladder or because of the material rewards I think it's going to get them, fame or money, but do it because it's the only thing they can do. They were born to be entrepreneurs. It's a calling, it's a career. And because they have some idea that does keep them up at night and helps them get out of bed in the morning that they are interested in and will continue to be passionate about for a 10-year period of their life, if everything goes well.
Right. We want the missionaries, not the mercenaries. We don't want the people who are going from, premier college and then instead of consulting or banking, they're trying to get into YC, right? That's not the type of founder necessarily.
I don't think that worked out long term for them. I think I like the idea that, no startup dies mid keystroke. At an early stage, the real resource you're dealing with isn't money, it's momentum. And, I think if you really feel passionately about something and you run out of money, the really determined founders will find a way to raise cash from family or friends or wherever they have to. But most startups die because the founders lose interest. They're tired, they're demoralized. They'd rather do something new and exciting and less risky. And so I think it does. Yeah, it's easy like anything to start. A project is easy to go on a first date with somebody and imagine a perfect future, but it's 2 years into a marriage where things aren't working out. Are you going to stick that out, or are you going to give up and get divorced? And I think really great founders, are defined by their persistence.
So when you're in that kind of environment where you're taking on the hardest problems, the team is handling maybe the ones that they can handle, you're handling everything else. How do you know what to delegate? Is it just a function of some things I can't delegate, so I do those, everything else I delegate? Sometimes I think people try to delegate maybe a little too early. How do you think about that?
I'll speak to the way that we run, which I think is pretty unique compared to other companies, but I think very effective, at least for us. As I mentioned, we have a really small team and we're doing a really big thing. The product is really complicated. We're serving a lot of customers. We're trying to grow as fast as possible. I have, at least our equation for getting that done successfully is to hire incredibly competent people and build a culture of high ownership that depends on trust and respect, where people can get their jobs done basically without a lot of meetings or a lot of communication. And so we're essentially, we have like a bunch of nuclear engines on the team that are producing way more value than, you know, your average professional, that are all pointed in the same direction. And so we've worked really hard to recruit people that can thrive in that culture and build a culture where those people thrive and want to stay here a very long time. And because I think and that's been hard to do, it means we interview, you know, thousands of people literally for a job before we hire them. We're very intentional that we bring on the team. Good is not good enough here, but, you know, because we can, I think, filter for the right kind of person, and we create an environment, you know, where we have maximized people's ownership in the company. We give a lot of trust to people. You know, there's many examples of this, but every Friday we share the executive dashboard that we share with investors with our teammates. Everybody in the team has access to Stripe to see our revenue. Our engineers pair directly with customers. And so there's strong feedback loops throughout the company between people's work and the impact it's making on our customers, on the business. That creates, you know, motivation, ownership, and a sense of alignment where people would make, you know, my goal is that people would make the same decision I would make if I were in their shoes. And because we have like a high ownership culture of people who are pursuing and achieving excellence, it means I don't have to do as much because I trust people. At the same time, you know, I don't know if I'd say I'm a believer in micromanagement, but I certainly am involved in every detail of the company. And so I don't believe in the idea that, like, you know, you should just hire the best people and let them run. Like that. You should hire great people, but then you should help coach them to be their very best selves, because even star athletes need feedback. They need to be pushed. They need to be complimented sometime and cheered up. But I think A+ players want to become even better versions of themselves. At least that's true with every person on our team. And so someone on our team joked that we were doing founder mode here at Blaze and Almanac way before Brian Chesky even popularized the term. But I'm the PM. I set the roadmap. Everybody on the team QAs features, but I QA everything that we build before it goes to customers. We have for years. I look at every piece of marketing copy. I interview every person that gets to a final round. I'm on every stand-up every day. And basically, I see my job in the company as make sure we're all moving in the same direction, make sure everybody's work is up to our standard, what our customers deserve, you know, make sure that we're following through on the promises we've made to our investors, our shareholders, our customers. And, you know, so that's, I think, what my job is. Like, we're all swimming in the same direction and we're actually moving towards our goal. When something new comes up in the company, because we're growing, like, what often happens is, I will kind of prototype a job. So like, hey, we now, for example, need to do a lot of product marketing. We don't have a product marketer yet. So I've been doing product marketing. And often when I find myself, sometimes this happens intentionally, like, oh yeah, I realize we need to do something, I do it. Sometimes it's just kind of more intuitive, where like I find myself like spending a lot of time on something and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess this is a job we need to hire for. Like, my co-founder was running customer service, like literally managing thousands of tickets every day before we hired our first CS person. And we were like, oh yeah, I guess we should hire a CS person now, because like there's enough people writing in that like we can't do this ourselves. And that's happened with job after job. I've done probably every job in the company at some point. And I think it's helpful to prototype new roles, because it helps me understand what the job is, what is needed in someone. So our hiring spec can be really tight and narrow around what we're looking for with experiences and strengths. And yeah, my job is eventually to take myself out of those jobs, because the problem with being the CEO doing an IC position is that I actually can't do anything on my own. Like, right. I don't often have the skills you need. Like, I joke all the time, for a while with this product marketing stuff, a lot of the work is like writing lifecycle emails, writing newsletters. I don't actually know how to use our email sending service like Iterable. I'm not the graphic designer, so like I can't put any images in. I'm still kind of being the CEO, but just doing someone else's job. And it's really annoying and expensive for everybody for me to do that for a long time. So the way I kind of, to answer your question, delegate is by kind of figuring out like what the new jobs are in the company, filling in at first, but then trying to hire myself out of that job, and then rinsing and repeating. So that in a groceries company, there's always more stuff to do. And so whether it's product, recently I've done this for product marketing, for brand marketing. Right now I'm doing it for finance. As I shared, we probably need to hire a controller soon, but like me and my co-founder are managing the budget and it's getting very overwhelming. But these kind of jobs pop up, and because I'm the only person, I fill in first. And my goal is to, quickly take myself out of that position so that I'm not annoying other people and slowing down the company, and hopefully get back to that place again where I'm mainly getting feedback and making sure we're all swimming in the same direction.
What I'm hearing is that you're not the quote unquote idea guy, right? You're in there executing, making sure everything's operating and all that.
It's funny you mentioned that, like, yeah, I mean, ideas are cheap, obviously, but so much of what I'm sharing, like, I've learned through fire and failure of just like stuff up so many times with Almanac and other things I've tried to do before that like I've through different failure modes, I'm getting punched in the face 100 times. I've learned what the success modes are, and I've got punched in the face enough times that I like don't want to get punched the 100th and first time. I figure out like, okay, I've done that, 100 times. Like let's do the thing that works. But when it comes to strategy, you can see me rolling my eyes because like the best strategy comes from listening to your customers and just like literally doing what they tell you to do. And often the companies that are growing the fastest are not ones with the biggest ideas. That's kind of ex post facto. You can talk to a journalist and be like, oh yes, this is my vision all along. Like it was this whole mission statement, but really growth comes from just like understanding the 1,000 small things in your product that are creating friction for your customers and just tackling them one by one. And those things are often like pretty dumb. Like they're often so small that an, Ivy League grad or like a PM from some fancy company, like they won't even see it because they're like, oh, this is beneath my intelligence. Like, I don't want to fix this small thing. I want this intellectually challenging problem. So I'm going to go create a bunch of complexity for myself and for everybody else. And we're going to spend a bunch of months solving something in a way that like nobody needs and not even at the expense of focusing on the product that exists in market right now and how do we make it better. And most products get product market fit for like a pretty simple job to be done. Like if you think about Uber, like it's like, how do you get from A to B? And Uber was, really, really good. I worked at Lyft, so I had a front row seat to how Uber grew faster than us. And like Uber was just really good at like making every single part of the experience better, faster, cheaper, and like not overcomplicating the core business. Yes, they built other businesses too, but like they were maniacally focused as DoorDash or Airbnb has been on like just removing friction. And so, like my job, I see it as like our customers give us so much feedback all the time that like my job is just to listen to them as closely as I can, trying to understand exactly what they want and then get it built as fast as possible. And if I do that, 100 times a week, 1,000 times a month, like we will end up growing faster than our competitors because the product itself will just be, a little bit better in 1,000 ways, which compounds into a significant advantage. So I talk to investors who are like, oh, like, what do you think the future of AI is? Or like, what about a world where like there's content everywhere? And like, I can pontificate just like anybody else, but that's just like really what I'm concerned about is like, are we building something that is useful to our customers? That's so hard to do. So few companies do that, if we can do that pretty well, like we will be fine. We'll be a very big company and we will figure out the rest. And so to me, it's always like a sign of like someone who doesn't know what they're doing or hasn't actually built anything when they like talk about high level ideas or strategies, because as I said, I think smart people love complicated things, and the reality, like often the success mode is a bunch of really dumb, stupid little things that create a lot of change rapidly for customers and for the business.
It's interesting that you draw a parallel to Uber and Lyft, because early in the conversation, you mentioned Copy AI, you mentioned Jasper, right? You guys are sort of have the second mover advantage, similar to Uber did with UberX, which Lyft had a similar product first. Do you think that second mover advantage is like an inherent risk to being first to market, that other companies will come along and take the first mover on? Or do you think that it's just you guys in particular found something unique here that has propelled you to grow faster?
Yeah, I love second mover advantage. Like I feel lucky about when we entered the market. I think Copy and Jasper were first movers in part because they had access to a limited set of licenses to ChatGPT before everybody else did. And so it sounds like luck to me, or an advantage that they didn't necessarily earn through intelligence or execution, but they were kind of first to market nonetheless. And I think that's a trap, because once you find product market fit, it's like a set of gears in an engine that start to perfectly fit together. And once you find it, it's really hard to change. Once the elements of a business work together with a market, it's really hard to change them. And that's why there's the innovator's dilemma and things like disruption, because once there's good rationale for how the pieces of business work, it's really hard to like go and kill your business to pick a bigger opportunity. So I think that's the problem with first mover advantage, is you get trapped essentially in like an early version of what a market could be. I think about this a lot with there's this concept of weak technologies and strong technologies. And often in a big disruptive wave, you have some weak technologies first that have kind of the right idea, but not the whole idea. So downloading music on your computer before streaming, or is a good example, or like mini discs or, 8-tracks. Like there's often like a thing that like is kind of right, but it takes another wave of innovation to be like, oh yes, this got us on the right track, but there's a strong technology that is built from the weak technology. In AI, I actually think and I think no one's really branded this yet, but no one talks about this well because it's a whole bunch of VCs and technologists, but there's this idea of agentic AI, terrible branding again. I don't think it makes any sense. But we see this in our business, and I think we stumbled upon it where the weak technology with AI is basically these set of co-pilots you see companies building, where Notion or Microsoft Office or Canva like build AI into existing features they have to automate them or make them better, remove backgrounds, or like search better than algorithmic search. Yeah, so a 5 or 10x improvement, I don't know. It's cooler, but like, would you switch for it? No, and that's why when there's often initially with AI, I think people thought the gains from AI would go to the incumbents, like the companies I just mentioned. In the same way, mobile advantages went to Google and Facebook and Microsoft. But what we've seen, so we have some of those features in our product where AI can finish sentences for you or improve your syntax. But where our product has really taken off is with these complex multi-step processes where you can ask Blaze, I want a quarter's worth of Instagram content about this new product I'm launching. And Blaze will find information in your documents about that product. It will write 100 posts for you. It will find photos or visuals for those 100 posts. It will schedule them. It will post them. It will analyze them. And Blaze, you can actually check and make sure it's right at all the stages, but it also can do that just in a single click. You can give, for example, this podcast recording to Blaze, or a YouTube video you've made, or a white paper, and say, I want a multi-channel campaign. I want 4 newsletters, 20 social posts, 100 tweets. I want a web page about it. And Blaze will go and create all that content for you. Again, schedule it and post it all in your brand voice. And so the comparison to those workflows I'm talking about is not Microsoft Office or Canva or even ChatGPT. It's a person. It's hiring someone on your team to do that work, hiring an agency to do it, or doing it yourself. And so what we see people, and this is not, again, this sounds like something I am so smart to say, but our customers, when I talked to them, stopped comparing us recently to ChatGPT or to Canva or to Google Docs and started comparing us to not hiring someone on their team, or the amount of time they save by not learning it themselves. So the alternative to like co-pilots, the alternative to AI that like helps speed up your workflow is AI that just does the work for you. And we have basically, I think, in the process of building Blaze, gone from like, hey, how do we speed up parts of your workflow when it comes to creating content for your small business, to, hey, we built a virtual marketer that does marketing for you instead of hiring someone on your team or doing it yourself. And so the output is content, but really the outcome is growth. And what we have seen from our customers who have been with us for 3 months, 6 months, a year, is that it doesn't just produce great content that's an output, but that it actually is helping them grow their business faster on the internet. And when you compare what Blaze does for $35 and in the growth it produces, we've had customers go from like 0 to 10,000 Instagram followers or 20,000 TikTok followers in a couple of months. We've had customers go from having no blog posts to being #1 on SEO on Google in a couple of months. And that's really cool, just quality-wise, results-wise. But when you calculate like the per lead cost or the per customer cost, the CAC for our customers of what it costs them through Blaze to find those customers, it's like less than a cent. And so we're not talking about a 5 or 10x improvement. We're talking about like 100x, 1,000x improvement. And that's what I think where AI is going is not like, let's automate parts of existing tools, but let's replace those tools altogether. Let's just have like your computer do the work for you. And I think the right answer will be a set of controls that humans, real people have over the AI. So not just for safety reasons, but just to check along the way, like, hey, is this thing pretty good? Like you wouldn't, it's the same reason when you get into a Waymo, they show you the directions on the screen, because I think we humans want some kind of quality assurance of like, hey, is this machine, some feedback loop of like, does it know what it's doing? And just the ability to intervene in case it's not. We may get to the point where you don't need to check it, but I don't think that'll be for years. So I think with Blaze, we've stumbled onto, I think, the strong technology that is coming behind the weak technology. And I actually worry there that we are a first mover on that. And I worry that someone might come and look at us and be like, hey, these guys figured it out first, but what about, X, Y, and Z? And because we're locked into our product market that, we can't see it or we can't respond to it fast enough. So that scares me a bit, but it's great to be able to learn from other companies. Last thing I'll say on this is like, because I thought a lot about this, we serve this part of the market that no one pays attention to, which are, I think, the backbone of Main Street, the backbone of the American economy, the global economy. We serve real estate agents, financial advisors, fitness trainers, mom and pop shops, D2C brands, Shopify store owners, like basically everyone you might buy products and services from on a daily basis. And a lot of those folks aren't technologists. In fact, like we define our customers as being primarily non-technical. We built a marketing tool for non-marketers, a technical tool for non-technical people. And so our customers are never going to be like on, Twitter or on products hunt, like looking for they're not classic early adopters where they're looking for the latest and greatest things. So I think our job in the ecosystem is to on our team be looking out for where is their validated product market fit with cool features or use cases out there for video or for images or in different channels, and then basically to take those ideas and simplify them for our customers. In the same way that Apple often does this in their areas, I don't want to actually be first to market. I want to see what other people are experimenting with, where they're finding traction, and not even take their customers, but take their idea and translate it in a way that is easy and simple and fun for our customers to use. And I think in that way we can, grow basically a moat around our customer base and grow into a big business without a lot of disruption.
Want to get more insights like that? Each week, I actually interview multiple founders. For the ones who don't join the podcast, I write up a case study and share it with all Founding Journey members. I also write weekly tactical deep dives, share startup opportunities, and analyze trends that I'm noticing. We've also got a community of founders, an investor and pitch deck database, and more fun stuff like over $60,000 in perks and discounts to help you build, grow, and raise capital for your startup. Go to join.foundingjourney.com to get access.
Yeah, I think moats in the AI product space, it's a very, very tense discussion right now, because I think a lot of people worry that if AI makes building the products themselves so much easier than building a great product, it's hard to build a moat around that. You really need customer trust, brand, distribution, integrations and partnerships, data, all those types of things. You guys have invested really heavily on the branding side in particular. Like if anyone goes to Blaze.ai right now, she'll see exactly what I mean. It's an incredibly striking brand. Was that a conscious decision early on? Do you think other founders should invest super early in branding? And like, what's the trade-off between kind of standing out and alienating customers?
It was an intentional decision early on. I mentioned that, we knew that we wanted to focus on consumer motion with self-serve. And if you look at the most profitable consumer companies in the world, they all have great brands, whether it's Nike or Apple or Starbucks. I think there's a strong correlation between brand prominence and resonance and market capitalization and enterprise value. And I think that's because if you can build your company into something that stands for more than just the functional value and services that you provide, if you can create an emotional connection with your customers beyond, just the value they get from using the product, they retain more, they will pay you more, they're less price sensitive, they will share the product for you and basically contribute to your growth. They will become your proselytizers. It's almost a surprise to me that more companies don't invest in brand in a meaningful way, because it's such a force multiplier around your growth and the retention of your business. I would say, I think people don't because a lot of people aren't creative or, maybe don't see things that way, but it's still striking now that whenever I talk to customers, and I get on the phone with 2 to 3 customers every day, building the brand was an intentional decision from the start. If you look at the most profitable companies in the world, they all have great brands, whether it's Nike or Apple or Starbucks. And the reason for that is because brands create a connection with your customers beyond just the functional value that your products provide. If the brand stands for some bigger idea that people resonate with or feel a kinship to, they will give your product more of a try. They will stay around longer. They will be less price sensitive and pay more for it, as anyone who buys an iPhone knows, or buys a pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks. And they will talk about it to their friends. And so brand, I think, is a force multiplier on every aspect of a business. And it's crazy to me that more consumer companies don't invest in brand, because it really helps you also just stand out in the market when you're trying to find a foothold. And to this day, when I talk to customers, I'd say 90% plus of them say that the reason they tried Blaze is because they liked our brand. They laughed at one of our ads on Instagram. They loved our website. When you sign up for the product, the first email is like a comic book strip. You pick a character when you sign up for the product. We play with a lot of like gaming concepts to make the product fun and enjoyable to use. And so we try hard to build an emotional connection with our customers. And it's not just tactical stuff like, oh, we think this is cool, but really all of those things I mentioned build to this broader idea that Blaze gives you superpowers and turns you from an ordinary person into an extraordinary entrepreneur or business person. And that, I think the reason we valorize sports stars, reality TV, celebs, pop stars, superheroes is because they all seem like they've been able to take control of their future. And our brand promise at Blaze is that you can be the hero of your own story. It takes hard work and creativity, and of course, some help from tools like Blaze. A lot of folks, there's this notion out there that small businesses are bad businesses. That if you own a cafe or you're a personal trainer, you couldn't do anything else. And when I talk to our customers, they don't want to be like Amazon or Nike or Apple. They want to be the very best version of themselves they can be. And so what we're promising at Blaze, what we want our brand to stand for, is that just because you're small doesn't mean you can't be great. We think anybody can build something great, and we want to help everybody do that. And what separates, the successful from everybody else is that they bet on themselves, they don't give up, they invest in their creativity and their persistence. And, we want to say, of course, use great tools like Blaze to help them along the way. But I think people connect intuitively with that idea. And so what we're trying to do is build this movement around this idea. And the same way Nike purports that anyone can be an athlete. You don't have to be Michael Jordan to be an athlete, but if you wear Nike shoes, you too can realize your potential the same way he did. And of course, when you talk to anyone about Nike or Apple, no one talks about like the quality of the leather, or like, the resolution on your screen. It says something about you, to be a consumer, an owner of that product. And, the fact that we already see this happening at such an early stage for us is like so cool. It makes me really bullish about all the investments we're making in our brand moving forward, because of course the product itself is really good, but the combination of a resonant brand and a great product means really happy customers who love being subscribers, love being consumers. And so we have a huge program inside our marketing team right now called Customer Growth, where essentially we are leveraging our customers to grow our product for us. Our customers are hosting events for us. They are bringing people together locally in their communities. They're, of course, referring people into the products. We're building a huge community that we're launching next year that is run by our customers. We're going to do conferences with our customers, because it's not just about Blaze and how to use Blaze really well, but having people help other people like them figure out how to grow faster. Growing at all is the name of the game for any small business owner or entrepreneur out there. And it's really hard. It's never been harder to grow a business on the internet. And we want to help level the playing field. And of course, Blaze can do part of that, but what our brand stands for is bigger than that. And I think that's a real opportunity for us to build something that stands out from everybody else. In the same way, I think there's lots of payment processing tools out there, but when you think about Stripe, you think about Stripe being developer friendly. Like they have kind of cornered the market when it comes to startups, because they have said, we are for developers, we understand developers, we love developers, we're going to build for them, and we're going to do a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with our core product because we want to help these people do this thing. And I think we have a similar opportunity in our space to be the home on the internet for teams of one, small business owners who want to build something great.
I think that happens, that sort of like resonance with a certain demographic, ICP, that happens when you really understand them and what their aspirations are. And I think what you said really demonstrates that you guys understand the small business world, which is it's about doing more. It's about growth. It's about expanding the business, building a better life for yourself. And I think that's what AI is enabling these types of businesses to do, right? AI for smaller companies enables them to do more with less. AI for bigger companies enables them to basically cut their costs and improve their margins, right? You guys chose, after looking at the big company market, you guys chose to go after the small company market. And I think I think the approach it makes a lot of sense. I think another thing that you've talked about, which I wanted to highlight, was building too many features into a product. I think this is something that a lot of founders fall into the trap of. I think you mentioned that you had done this with past product. How does a founder know that they're overbuilding? And is there a time or a place where that actually, it does make sense to kind of build everywhere? Like, to talk to me about this.
Oh yeah, it's a great question and topic. And I think, as I mentioned, it's a problem often for the most talented and most intelligent people out there, because I think really smart people want to be stimulated. And so they naturally glom towards complexity. So they pick complicated ideas and products and markets because they think it's going to be interesting. Well, I don't know if they think this intentionally. I certainly wasn't a conscious decision, but I think Almanac is a really complicated product and a really complicated market, as you probably heard. And I think part of me was like, oh, well, I'm really smart. Like, I can solve this complicated problem. Like, I'll show them, or at least it'll be really interesting along the way. And so I think mistake one is not noticing that bias. If you're someone who's very talented, that you're probably making it harder on yourself by overcomplicating the problem that you take on. And I often think, if you look at the biggest, most successful companies out there, they often do a very simple thing at their core. At least they started doing a very simple thing. They may be complicated, diversified companies now, but most jobs that people buy products for aren't complicated. They are very simple. And I think that gets lost, a near-term blind spot for really smart people. On the execution side, though, I think my number one mistake with Almanac is that we didn't launch. We brought on customers, we did sales, but we never launched in a big way the enterprise version of our product. And yes, it's important, of course, not to launch before you think that you have something that's minimally great. It's important to bring some customers on to validate the product and the value proposition before you launch, to make sure that it's not a piece of shit. So I'm not saying launch before you feel ready, but it's really easy to never launch or just keep building because you think, oh my God, there's another thing we have to do. This isn't right. And of course, this is magnified if you pick a really complex problem that needs a complex solution. But the benefit of launching, even before you feel fully ready, is that launching gives you a very clear and immediate response from a statistically significant market about whether the thing you're building is even relevant in the first place to somebody's problem. And you can't do that if you're only talking to 5 or 10 customers a week. Even 100 customers a week is not enough signal, because you could be like, oh, well, I'm just not talking to enough people. I need to talk to more people. The only way to really get clear market signal is to launch in a big way to 10,000 to 100,000 people. That was my mistake, I think, with Almanac, is that we never launched. And so when you launch, I think a couple things can happen. Either, it could totally bomb. You put it on product hunt, you try really hard, you get press, and either no one comes to the website, that means your value proposition is wrong, or people do and they sign up and then they don't stay around, which means your execution is wrong. And then you're like, okay, well, at least then you have the benefit of knowing we need to pivot right now. And you don't spend more time investing in something that's not going to work. Or, you could launch and kind of get a middling response where you have a distribution of outcomes. You have a couple of customers that are really into it, a lot of people who aren't. But those couple of customers are interesting because if you go talk to them, you can figure out, well, why are they staying when everyone else isn't? And that gives you some green shoots of product market fit to invest into. Or you can have a response where, a bunch of people, they say, hey, we really like this thing about the product, but you're missing this feature. Or we really like this, but this part sucks. And again, that's some green shoot, that's some traction that you can build on towards product market fit. I think launching, the goal is never, if you strike it out of the box, fantastic, mazel tov. But I think what more than often happens is you get a mixed bag of feedback, but that feedback is essential to then the cycle of iteration that you need to go through to take a good product and make it into a great product. That has happened with every launch we've done at Blaze, where we had a lot of assumptions internally, but when we launched, I think we had it's like a C+ or a base hit, but at least we were on base then, and we had enough people using the product to get us feedback to go from, to use a baseball metaphor, second base all the way home, or to take a C+ product and turn it into an A+ product. And so I think the way to prevent from overbuilding is to get something out there to a lot of people, get feedback, listen, and then figure out what of what you built is useful, what's and use that feedback to direct you forward. If you don't do that, it is really easy to go with your own good ideas, which almost all the time are not what your customers need. No one is their customer. Even if you think you are, you're not your customer. And I'm humbled by the number of times I've been wrong. I think I'm pretty smart. I think I have good product taste and intuition, but I'm always wrong. I'm wrong 90% of the time about what I think is right. And so talking to customers is the only way to figure out what the truth is for your customer and to prevent overbuilding. And I meet with a lot of young founders all the time, and I see them falling into this trap where they're like, oh my God, my vision is this. And I'm like, I think this is a mistaken assumption in the market that to be a good founder, you need vision or you need strategy, and that you should just be obstinate in the face of data or feedback. No. Like, yes, it's important to stay persistent towards the idea of building something great, towards the thing that you think is real, but you need to be flexible along the way. I compare it to the different, it's like, I ask people, do you want to build an art project or do you want to build a business? The difference is, if you want to build an art project, you're building it for yourself. And maybe if someone 50 years from now thinks it's worth money, cool. But like, you can't expect that. Most artists are starving and it's a passion project, and that's fine. That's art. But if you want to build a business, the distinction is you're building it for somebody else. You need to listen to that person. You need to respond to them and serve them and be subservient to their needs, their desires, their motivations instead of your own. And if you do that, which is, again, a really humbling experience, especially for a really smart person, you will eventually succeed. And I think a lot of founders who fail and overbuild believe in their own vision and their own intuition instead of listening. And I think the best way to listen is to launch.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see a lot of people fall into that trap and have trouble getting out of it. I also want to talk about fundraising, because you guys you raised a ton of money. You mentioned the seed round was one of, if not the biggest at the time for a seed with 9 million. How does that change expectations within a company? How does that change relationship with the investors you do bring on? How does it change product strategy? How does it change your thinking as a founder?
Great question. And yeah, we raised also a $35 million Series A, which was also one of the largest, I think, of the time. And that was the peak of the market in 2021. So we raised, over $50 million in 4 years, a lot of money. My general advice is don't do it. I mean, I think this topic's talked about a lot, and yet people still make mistakes on this all the time, which is like, yeah, it's really easy to evaluate yourself in a startup by the wrong metrics. And dollars raised is a vanity metric. Number of people on your team is a vanity metric. How much PR you get, how many conferences you're featured at is a vanity metric. And a lot of people learn this the hard way and often don't figure it out before it's too late, before their whole business comes crashing down around them. And I think that's, to my point on feedback, I think the hardest part in most jobs is where the rubber hits the road, and most people avoid that point of traction because it sucks to be wrong. It hurts. It doesn't feel good to be told no, or that you're wrong. And so, like, I think salespeople often especially average salespeople will do anything but ask customers for money. Marketers will do anything but put content out into the world. Product managers will do anything but show their ideas to customers. Engineers will do anything but QA their own features. And everybody hates because that's that moment where your idea meets the truth sucks. But if you can build tolerance to that and you learn how to do that, you build muscles for that, you will not only get good at figuring out the truth better than anyone else, but you'll be the only group of people doing that in a profession full of people not doing it. And so the same thing is true for founders, where it's really easy, relatively speaking, to raise money, to hire people, to spend money. The hard thing is easy to build product, as we were just talking about. The hard thing is showing off that product to customers and getting told no 100,000 times before you figure out what yes looks like. That is painful, and you have to do it for a long time often to figure out what the truth looks like to your particular problem that you want to solve. And I think fundraising is a major distraction to that essential skill. And it actually makes it so much harder to spend time on that, because the more money you raise, as I'm sure you know, the easier it is to spend it. And so the more time you as a founder are spending hiring people, then managing those people, dealing with poor performance on your team, trying to communicate and keep everyone aligned. The more money you raise, the bigger your team, the more cost you have, the more your time is spent on overhead things, not on the core thing. And the core thing, especially pre-product market fit, is finding product market fit. That's the only thing that matters. And so I think money, of course, raising money is a distraction, but then it creates more distractions. There is more of your time away from the only thing that matters. And I think that's just inevitable. I say all this as if I'm from on high, but I've just learned everything that I'm talking about the hard way. I've done everything I've said wrong. That's how I know that it's wrong. We raised all this money, and of course, what did we do when we raised a lot of money? Well, we went and hired people. And then, of course, when you're hiring really fast, you can't hire really great people because you're just trying to bring people on board. So you hire a bunch of average people. It's inevitable that as your team grows, even if you really try to hire good people, the average will go down just statistically. So, I was in a CEO support group recently with companies at our stage or of our revenue size, but we were the smallest company. At least I think we have 19 people. everyone else in the room were managing teams, I think, of like 50, 100 people with the same amount of revenue that we have right now. And everybody in the room was talking about people problems. Like, oh my God, I have to fire my head of marketing, or I want to layer my head of sales, or, our customer service team, like, isn't dealing with people the right way. And like, we have none of those problems now because we did overhire, and I did experience how much of my time was going towards what I call playing company, like playing startup as if like we're playing house. And we didn't deserve the money in the first place, I think. We certainly didn't deserve to the team size, but having that big of a team distracted us and slowed us down from building something real for people that would get us there. And so it's really hard, especially if you're good at fundraising or you're in a hot space to say no to money, to be ascetic in some ways or like a monk. But I think that really smart founders, and it's often second-time founders that know not to take too much money, but it's, it does make sense to not take more than you need. And of course, the other benefit of this is the less money, there's math involved here for anyone who's going through this, where it benefits to yourself to have a lower valuation early on. It's easier to clear it for your next round. It is less dilutive for your ownership in the company. And those are things you don't really think about as you're a first-time founder raising your first 1 or 2 rounds. But you're playing a long game with your cap table. And the more money you raise early on, the more you give away, the harder it is to eventually kind of clear your valuation and give. If you raise your seed round at $10 million versus $30 million, it's going to be like, you will need to build a business that's like over time, probably 10 to 20x larger because you're going to have to clear your valuations in each successive round. It's going to get bigger and bigger and harder to even find a market that can support that big of a business. Much better to raise a little, raise what you need up front, not more. Don't overly dilute yourself. Don't make it harder later on. I'm probably talking to people who still won't follow my advice here, but as you probably know, like I learned this the hard way that, we will clear our valuation now, but our Series A we raised at $150 million valuation. And I spent years of my life losing sleep, wondering how I was going to find a market and build a business that could clear $150 million. I would have much rather raise a Series A, maybe a $10 million Series A at a $50 million valuation, or $20 million even at 100. Like, that's a much easier thing to do, to figure out, to build a business that can clear those valuation hurdles. And I have friends who raised at even bigger numbers than we did. And I could have actually taken more money than I did at a higher valuation. And I'm so glad I didn't. But because I have friends now that have to clear $300 million valuations or $500 million valuations, and they're sitting with a ton of cash in their bank account with no product market fit and no way out. And if that doesn't scare you, listener, then I don't know what does. But the only thing worse than running out of money is wasting your time on something that's not going to work, that you're not passionate about anymore. And I think that's the dark side of raising too much money too early.
The ironic thing, of course, is that now you do have a product that can let you grow into that valuation, which is, your investors are probably very happy about that, and you're probably sleeping a little bit better, at least.
I mean, I feel lucky. Like, I don't attribute any of this to like intelligence. It's like, I think we just like the cards fell well, for us, and they could have easily not at any point along the way. And so I don't attribute it, to my skill. And I think often about, I'm lucky that like I'm basically able to, to your point, kind of get a second chance to do things the right way after doing so many things the wrong way for so many years. But I think that's why, second-time founders are often so dangerous, because if you have failed the first time or whatever, got a base hit, and you want to do it again, I think, second-time founders are able to learn from all their mistakes and come back with a vengeance.
I feel you 100%. We made a lot of those same mistakes, my first company as well. Okay, I want to do some rapid fire outro questions here before we wrap. First, who's an investor that other founders should take capital from, and why?
Catherine Boyle, who is now at Andreessen Horowitz, runs the American Dynamism practice. You may follow her on Twitter or know of her for her thought leadership, and she is very, very smart. But Catherine believed in us when nobody else did, at a very early stage, believed in me personally, and has just been so incredibly supportive and encouraging along the way, reminding me to believe in myself even when I didn't. And it's easy for an investor, especially in an early stage company without product market fit, to be mean to their founders and be like, oh, you're so stupid, or why aren't you doing what your competitors are doing? But Catherine has been so consistently positive and helpful, and I would not be where I am without her.
What's one thing you would change about the startup world?
Remove the sheen and the shine around venture capital. I think the marketing is fraudulent. I think it's branded in a way that isn't what it is. And I wish people could understand it as a product and know the risks of what they were taking before they took it.
What's your number one piece of advice for a first-time founder?
Do your homework. I think it's generally good advice in life, but I think a lot of people do stuff without preparing. And I think success comes when you aren't prepared and that preparation meets an opportunity. And I think a lot of people are like lazy and just like don't even try even when an opportunity is before them. And I think if you're a founder, before any important meeting, try a little bit, even when you're tired or it's hard.
And lastly, what's something you believe that most people would disagree with you about?
Mountains are better than beaches.
Fair. We got to get you out of California and into Colorado or something like that then.
Yeah, someday once I clear that next valuation hurdle, maybe you'll see me crawling in from a cabin somewhere.
Cool, Adam. Thanks so much for coming on. This was great, super tactical. I think a lot of people are really gonna love it. Where can folks find you and obviously Blaze as well?
I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn with more great thoughts like these, hopefully. And for any entrepreneurs out there, we have a really strong founder and entrepreneur community for free at Blaze.ai, where there's just a lot of organic discussions happening among founders. And so even if you're not a customer, I encourage you to go to Blaze.ai and check out our free resources, especially both if you're in tech and want to start a venture-backed startup, but also if you're just a normal person trying to make something of yourself. Our mission is to help you, and hopefully you find our product useful on the way, but there's tons of resources and more at Blaze.ai.
Love it. Adam, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. I write up my main takeaways from every conversation and make them available to all of our members at foundingjourney.com, along with a bunch of other perks and more content. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to Founding Journey on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. I post a new episode every Thursday. Also, consider leaving us a rating or a review. As a brand new podcast, this is the best way for us to get out there and founders to find us. See you next time.